Campbell, who is a former senior lecturer in nursing and now an independent health analyst. Good morning to you, Dr. Campbell. Good to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Lisa. Thank you.
Let me then just get your reaction, firstly, if I may, to the criticisms against the government just now of, in particular, the handling of testing procedures throughout this crisis by the Science and Technology Committee. Some may say inadequate, might be an understatement. What's your view?
Well, I think the government really underestimated the importance of testing from the start of this. Perhaps not so much the government, but their medical and scientific advisors. So as soon as I looked at what they were doing in China and South Korea and Taiwan with the testing, tracing, isolating strategy, I realised that these people weren't doing that for nothing. They had good reason for it because, of course, they were very experienced from the SARS 2002-2003 outbreak. So at the start of this, we only had one centralised testing facility. That was rolled out fairly soon, but there's always been a shortage of testing. Now, the government did order 3.5 million antibody tests quite early on in this pandemic from China, but it turned out they didn't work, unfortunately. So it wasn't entirely their fault, but there has been a lack of scientific clarity, I think, on this matter all the way through, up until quite recently.
The government also being accused, according to many of the front pages, of dragging its feet, in particular, Doctor, over advice too that losing your sense of taste or smell could be a sign of coronavirus. It was, of course, only officially added as a symptom yesterday. And yet scientists first raised the issue weeks ago, didn't they?
Well, indeed. And again, it's the government scientific advisors on this don't seem to have really quite joined up thinking. I mean, the most senior ENT doctors in the country, the ear, nose and throat consultants and professors, they put out a circular about this way back at the 20th of March. And Tim Spector's group on the COVID symptom tracking app from King's College London put out an official warning about this way back in the 1st of April. Now, quite why the government scientists didn't pick up on that then, I don't know, because they make these great claims to be evidence-based, and here was the evidence presented by the experts in the field and the epidemiologists, and they just didn't seem to pick that up. Now, what they were saying yesterday was that the test wasn't very specific. They seemed to be saying that, well, you can lose your sense of smell in quite a few conditions. And that's true. But the Tim Spector's group on the COVID tracing app, but they were saying that 59% of people who lost their sense of smell actually tested positive. So this is confirmed by actually antigen virus testing. And only 18% of people who lost their sense of smell tested negative. So it's fairly obvious that there's a fairly specific test here. And there is some evidence that young people lose their sense of smell more, and young women especially might lose their sense of smell more, which is also interesting. But so important to notice because these are the people that can have very mild disease. In fact, almost asymptomatic disease. In quite a few people, this anosmia, this loss of the sense of smell, has been pretty well the only clinical feature. But of course, these people are still infectious and have gone around shedding the virus. And the group in London have estimated that 50 to 70,000 cases have been missed. And of course, those 50 to 70,000 cases can go and infect other people. So I really do think there's question marks over the government scientific advice on this.
Well, indeed, and your figures there that you outlined certainly suggest that. Also in our headlines, perhaps you'll have noticed, Doctor, this morning, news too from the US that Donald Trump's revealed he's taking an anti-malaria drug to protect himself against COVID-19. What do you make of that? In particular, I'm thinking as, setting an example to people, and not just in America.
It's quite incredible. And what happened here was Donald Trump latched onto this chloroquine and this hydroxychloroquine idea, because this is a known drug. It's been used for treating inflammatory diseases and it's been used for treating malaria for years. So it's dirt cheap. We could make thousands of tons of it. And Donald Trump was pointing out, some might say boasting quite a long time ago, that they could make any amount of this really quite quickly, which is true. But what you have to realize is the way we know a drug works is when we do randomized double-blind controlled trials on it. And at the moment, there is none of that on hydroxychloroquine. And in fact, some studies show that it actually worsens the evolution of the condition. And as well as that, all drugs have side effects. So any drug that's going to work can have side effects. And one of the side effects here is it can cause abnormal rhythms of the heart. Now, hopefully this will be detected and treated, but it is a potential fatal condition. So taking any drug is a dangerous thing to do and should only be done on your own doctor's recommendations. All drugs have side effects and dangers. And to make this a political issue instead of a pharmacological scientific issue is indeed unfortunate.
Just finally, Doctor, while you're with us, I mean, here, coronavirus in care homes, we know, is going to be thrust back into the spotlight again later amid reports ministers knew a month ago that temporary workers in those sites were helping spread the killer disease. For you, how's the government handled that particular aspect of the disaster?
Yeah, I think the big problem here has been that there's been informal agency workers who work between different homes and therefore are able to spread the virus to these very vulnerable populations. Now, I think the problem was the government was very focused on the acute care sector, on the NHS, and a lot of the resources like the PPE went into that sector, and the care home sector were somewhat lower priority for that. But yet it's the care sector that houses the most vulnerable people, the people with increasing age and increasing morbidity, which we've known for a long time are much more likely to get severe disease and die from this condition. So it's indeed unfortunate that we've failed to protect these most vulnerable people in our society adequately. Looking back, we could have done a much better job, that is for sure, with more equipment, more resources, more education of staff. And simple things like regulating where staff work to make sure that some staff only work in one home and don't move around. There was a great case, well, a few cases, but one great case in Scotland where the care workers actually moved in for a couple of weeks and they actually lived in the care home with the residents. They didn't even go home to their own family. And that care facility had no cases.
Dr. John Campbell, appreciate your time this morning and your expertise. Thank you, Dr. John Campbell there, former senior lecturer in nursing and now an independent health analyst. You're listening to LBC